everyone, welcome to Homespun, where creativity and community come together. I am your host, Misty Doan, and today I'm joined by Rena Dearden, the owner and designer of the Rustic Horseshoe. Rena designs the most adorable stuffed animals and ride-on toys, and she shares her journey from law enforcement to taking the leap into her own creative business. Rena, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Would you mind telling everyone a little bit about your business and what you do?
Hi, thanks for having me. And the Rustic Horseshoe is my business, and as you said, I'm Rena, and I design and write sewing patterns for stuffed animals and write on toys like stick horses and other animals in that aspect.
I love that so much. And if you guys have not seen Rena's patterns, you need to be sure to check them out. Of course, you can see some of them behind you now, which are so cute, but they are just absolutely darling. So I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing a little bit about how you started your business and how you got to where you are today. So again, thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I know people will love to hear your insight, and I really appreciate it. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate you.
Of course. Of course. So to begin, can you just share a little bit about how you got into the world of crafting and sewing?
It's a kind of an interesting story. Well, first of all, going back, I've always loved crafting. I never thought I needed to learn how to sew. My grandmother sewed beautiful quilts. My mom would sew. I remember she made me a doll for Christmas, and she made me Halloween costumes and stuff like that, and some dresses. But I just never thought I had any need for sewing. And but I love to draw, and I love to make things and craft. And then I ended up getting into a law enforcement career, and so I was a police officer for a while. And then I had intended to stay in that until I retired from it, and working mom, that was my goal.
Yeah.
But after I had my daughter, it changed. I didn't want to leave her with somebody else all day, and in the career of law enforcement, sure, things can happen to you at any given time in life, but when you're working with your hand in the fire, there's a little more risk. So there are several aspects to it, and at that point, I decided I needed to shift. But it wasn't until 2 years later, after I had my son, that I decided to take the jump, and because I knew financially it was going to be extremely difficult, and it was, but we made it through. But I made the jump. I left law enforcement, and so after my daughter was born, so we'll backtrack to 2 years before that, I decided, I just was racking my brain, what could I do from home that I could make money, that I could help support my family, because my husband has a job too, but it took both of our incomes to make things work.
Absolutely.
And so I went to my crafting side. I'm like, what can I do? And then I looked at my childhood stick horse that I still have, that actually I like show and tell, because when people talk about things, I want to see it. So this is my childhood craft stick horse.
Oh, my goodness.
You can tell it was loved.
Yes.
And my mom patched it where the stick came through. She patched it where the chin came open. She made this bridle for it. So there's her sewing, or some of her sewing skills in this, and which is why it's also very special to me.
Yeah.
So I looked at that and I said to myself, I'm like, I could do that. I could take my drawing skills and I could make a pattern for that. And I wanted to go the pattern route, but of course with pattern lines, until you get several patterns, they're not going to bring in the money you need them to. So I was making physical product to sell. So it started with that, and then by the time my son was born, things were kicked off enough that I felt I could fill the gaps a little bit financially, but it was still very much a leap. And so that's how I got into it, and it was funny because I thought I was never going to be one to sew. And I remember at the police department, my police commander, she was wearing this really nice jacket, and I complimented her on her jacket one day. And she says, well, thank you, I made that. And I'm like, you're like this badass woman, and you sewed that jacket? And I was just like, it struck me, and and then when I was in the police academy, this is of course again prior kids, there was another woman who she had hair down to her rear end, and she was on the SWAT team, which I thought was funny because I had long hair at the time too, because I was going to get married just a couple months after the police academy, and they were telling me I was going to have to cut my hair, and I said, I'm getting
Not till after the wedding.
So that was another thing looking at that. But then we had to sew what they call our guidon flag, which is our class flag. And somebody put us the hint that this woman who was on the SWAT team sewed. And I'm like, maybe I have the wrong impression of sewing, and I don't know why I have this impression of sewing. So it kind of bumped me to thinking differently about it, approaching it differently.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to like put it in a box, whether it's sewing or quilting or crafting in general, and to say it has to look like X, Y, and Z. So to then be exposed to it repeatedly in a situation where you probably didn't expect it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too, because we have our stereotypes, and frankly, stereotypes are awful. They narrow our way of thinking, and I had a stereotype of what that was. And these two women, one of which is the police commander. She's still a very good friend. And it's funny, she sews garments, not stuffed animals, and she has a new grandson. And I've always gone to her for help with garments because they intimidate me. Yeah. And she actually came to me for help. And I was like, yes, it's coming full circle.
I love that. So, we all have our place, right?
We do. And so I do have the very first stick horse I made.
Oh my gosh.
I kept it because, well, it sucks. But but I also wanted to keep it to remind myself how far I've come.
Well, I was going to say, it's such a great way to honor your journey, right? When you can look back and see that.
It is. And for the ones who bought my early stick horses, I am so appreciative because they're the ones that help keep me going, that this could work. And of that, you keep improving. So this is my first stick horse that I made.
Oh, it's so cute.
And I had Google eyes on it because I didn't even really know about this, where to find the safety eyes. I searched, finally I found them. But, and it's denim and twine.
I love it.
So that's my first stick horse, and it's a nice reminder. I keep that here, and then this is what it ended up being.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
This is my husband's Marine Corps, one of his Marine Corps uniforms. But
I love
so
that.
So design, you can kind of see how it has.
Yeah, that's just one example of how your journey has evolved, right? From point A to point B. I love that so much. So was there a moment, you had made this big leap from, a career in law enforcement to wanting to be home with your children and using these creative talents that you knew that you had? Was there a moment where you're like, this is going to work?
There was a lot of moments to remind myself that this will work because it needs to work. It has to work. It's my best option. And there were a lot of moments of, what am I doing? We're struggling, but kept just moving forward and basically telling myself, this is going to work. I had faith that it was going to work, and was absolutely blessed that it has filled the gaps and it's continued to grow. And it is, it's still on that path of improving, but we're way further than I was when I first started. And if I would have just given up because of the concern, the worry, the financial stress, I don't know what I'd be doing now or what, but it wouldn't be this.
I love that. Well, and it's such a good reminder that so often the difference between success and failure just lies in that ability to persevere, right? To just continue through the hard things. And when we doubt ourselves, like, am I on the right path? Is this the right choice? Have I completely lost my mind? But being able to come back to that place where you're like, no, this is the best option I've got. I believe in it and I can continue on. Is that kind of what you're saying? That's what I'm getting from what you've shared.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember that when I first made this decision, my dad's like, you need to, because we had just invested in a business for my husband to run, which was a tool truck business.
Mm.
The timing ended up being really bad with
Yeah.
and all that for it working. But that was also part of my leap of, okay, we've got this business, we've got this potential for this income. And he's like, why don't you wait 5 or 6 years and then see how it's running? And I'm like, but then I missed the most crucial part that I want to be home for.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and I think that's such an important reminder for everyone that there's not a clear path and an exact right way to do it. When we started Missouri Star, we started it literally in one of the worst economic recessions that the country has seen in a long time. Everyone, literally everyone, thought we would fail. I can remember our UPS driver being like, picking up packages, and years down the road, he came back and was like, I really didn't think there was any chance you could make it. And so to see the opportunity for growth in spite of obstacles being stacked against you. Truly, I mean, you've got a new baby and a husband starting a new business, and you've taken this huge shift from what was your career to now building this new business of your own. And like all of those things can feel really heavy and scary. And so for someone who is maybe facing that same, I guess, pivotal moment, that same opportunity to make that choice, do you have words of encouragement for them, or a reminder maybe of how you made it through?
obviously, if finances absolutely aren't working, then you have to pivot and shift.
Yeah.
So you have to be flexible and open, but just really, really focus on your goal. And if you can make it work, stick through the tough times and see it through, and then see what it can become.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and so often we are initially limited in what we see that potential to be, right? And so especially when you're experiencing those hard times, I think it can be difficult to say, but this could be amazing, right? Like, yes, right now, using your business as an example, I'm designing a stick horse. But now here you are all these years later, and you have so many patterns, all these wonderful, stuffed animals that you've designed. And like, what an incredible leap from where you began with that adorable stick horse that you first shared with us. And now this incredible collection that you have just a smattering of behind you. And I'm sure you must be really proud to be able to look at that and to look at, here's day one and here's where I am now. And that's just such a reminder of why that hard work and that struggle is worth it, I would say. So congratulations to you for what you've done. That's really incredible.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And so back to your designs, because obviously you had an artistic knack. You said you like to draw. So how do you do your designs? What does that look like?
It looks like a really messy process.
I love that.
Messy in the sense, like, I don't know that I could ever really even teach it, because there's some people that teach how to pattern things, and I don't use the computer. It's all done by pencil and paper. And what I do is I start with the profile of the animal, the face, and that's what I start with, is focusing on the head and the face, because I think that's so important. Because the bodies, like in some of these animals, they all, like the cow has the same body as the horse, just different hooves, but it's all in the face and, the tail. But so I start with the profile, and then I kind of look at it 3D and figure out the gusset, and then it's just a matter of putting that into fabric. And some of them, when I first sew them, I'll sew up just the head. And so I'll have heads sitting around, but I'll sew it up and it'll look really wonky. And usually the first one is never spot on. And then I'll take a Sharpie and I mark on it where I want to adjust the fabric, and then I go back to paper. And so it's a back and forth. Usually I would say a minimum of about 3 times back and forth before I get it where I want it. And sometimes it takes me about 8 or 9 times before it's where I want it. And it could just
You're
be
really
minor
refining it.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. And so yeah, you're just sketching it out. I think that's so cool. I mean, to just be able to take this idea from your head, and especially when you're making something that resembles another living thing, right? To be able
Right.
to take this idea and then, put it down on paper, pair that with some fabric, and then have this kind of testing process is pretty impressive. So really, really cool. Is there the other thing that just came to mind, I guess, is thinking about how you have this connection in your business to something that was really important to you as a child. And so how did that idea kind of come to you? Like, was it just as simple as that? Like, you loved this as a child and you thought maybe your kiddos would too?
Yep. It was pretty
Really?
much as simple as that, of just trying to think. At the time, for example, when I started selling these on Etsy, there was only one other person selling stick horses on Etsy. So I had thought that it was kind of this dying toy, this toy that inspires creative play and active play because they're running around using it.
Yeah.
And something I loved as a child. And you were just seeing less and less of it, and you were seeing some of them, the commercially made ones I thought were not very good.
Yeah.
There was so much more that I thought could be done with it. And I know that from having my grandmother sew and my mom sew, that the things they made were always extra special to me. So combining those two things and taking a childhood toy that I absolutely loved, one that inspires active and creative play, and then also the aspect of something handmade. And I just thought it was a great combination, and to go with it and see how it does.
Well, I think you were spot on. I mean, like you said, there's a magic there in between that, like you said, active imagination that is the pinnacle of childhood, right? That's what it's all about, is to be able to just play and have kiddos use their imagination and imagine a world that is vast and beautiful and kind and fun and all the things that are what childhood is all about. And you're exactly right. There's something so inherently special that even can be conveyed to a child when they know someone took the time to make this gift for them. I can remember as a young girl, I had some little dollies that my grandma made for me, and I still have them because they were so special. They're the only toys that I still have from when I was young. But it's the same thing when that, grandma or mom or whoever took the time to make this just for you, and you're the one who gets to have it. What an incredible gift to give a child. And I love that you took that thing that was so special to you and have now shared that with the next generation, and so people can continue to use this skill that you've developed, the patterns that you've made, and you're sharing it with the world so they can continue to put that out there. What a great thing. So
thank you.
You bet. So is there because for me, I sew a lot of things, but even looking at one of your animals or your stick horses, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. So is there some words of encouragement for, people like me who are a little intimidated?
I would say just dive in. I also like to look at my background. I was making these when I was a novice sewist. And the way that I write my tutorials is bite-sized steps. And I like the saying how it goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Scenario, but what we get there. And it's just one step at a time. If you trust the process, follow it step by step. There's really no complicated sewing in the base of all these patterns. There are some advanced options if you wanted to try something a little more difficult to step it up a little bit, but almost all the patterns have options, and they have a confident advanced beginner option at the least. And if you just take it step by step, by the time you're done, you've got something you can be proud of. You made it through, and you made a 3D something.
I love that. That's really cool. Well, I have some little nieces and nephews who I think would absolutely love one of these. So I might have to try my hand and see if I can can make one happen. But so let's just switch gears a little bit here. So back to you starting the business, and you've got little ones at home. Was that a struggle to be a working stay-at-home mom and finding that balance?
Absolutely. I can remember on more than one occasion I wanted to put the gun and badge back on and leave the house.
Mm.
It was very challenging, the motherhood part of it. And don't get me wrong, of course I loved it.
Sure.
But balancing, and because I was making products to sell and trying to meet deadlines, I remember that oftentimes I was an 8-week processing timeout because I at least had enough orders, but I couldn't get through them faster than that. And it was very stressful. And I was always working on deadlines, always juggling everything. And while now I'm still juggling things with teenagers, it's different, well, of course, because they're teenagers, but also I'm still very busy, but it's a different busy. And with the patterns, I'm not tied to specific deadlines. If I need to get the kids to invent, or now I have to take them to doctor's appointments or whatever it might be, I'm not stressing that I have an order that's supposed to ship in 2 days and it's not finished.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've been able to pivot that and have it fit into your lifestyle a little bit better, which is so nice. Is there something that maybe like fills your bucket creatively that's not just the design side? Is there something where if you're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, you go to just kind of fill you back up?
Chocolate.
Oh, I love that. We all love a little chocolate now and then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. No, go ahead.
I love to do things. I want to try different things. For example, a friend and I this weekend are going to go to like a board and brush and do one of those. So it's time with a friend, but also doing something artistic-ish. I mean, it's with stencils, but it's still fun with paint. But I also find that in this stage in my life, with all the different things I'm juggling, that I don't get a lot of time for me, for things that I want to try outside of what my business is and outside of the kids, because I have both kids involved in volunteer work, and I volunteer with them, and then, of course, different activities. I homeschool, so that adds to it. That's not how it originally started, but that's where we're at now.
Hey, I can totally relate to that. I have the same path. That's not how we started, but that's where we are. So
yeah, and so I just figure it's the season I'm in, and I mean, I love horseback riding. That has always been my saddle time, is my therapy. But my horse is now 32 years old, and so he, I could take him for walks, but I don't ride him anymore. He's earned that retirement. He's in really good shape, but yeah, so that's kind of gone by the wayside. And so I'm just looking at having to, and also the current cost of taking care of horses, and if I was to get a new one when he's gone, whatever, is really a lot higher than it was 10 years ago or so. And so when he's gone, or even while he's here, I can still shift. My daughter and my husband have gotten into mountain biking, and they keep pushing me, and I might take that and try a different saddle time in the mountain bike. But
there you go.
The horse saddle time's always been in my heart, and it's my favorite.
I love that. Well, and again, that goes back to probably if you've always had a love of horses, no wonder you loved that toy so much as a little girl. How special. And for that to carry through your life to this point is just a really incredible, one, self-awareness in yourself to just know how special that it was to you, and to then just be able to carry that through. It's really quite impressive. And so I admire you for that, for just being able to identify something that you love, because I know as women, for myself especially, oftentimes it can feel like our hobbies are not worthy or important enough of our time. It's so easy to fill our hours and have our day full of all the other things that are on our list. And so even if it is, spending a little bit of time walking your good horse who has earned his retirement, it's worth it, and to be able to make the time for any of us who have things that we are passionate about and that we care deeply about. It's always better on the flip side. I know for me, just going on walks, I absolutely love to be out in nature and hear the birds and feel the breeze blowing in my hair. And I always drag my feet, and I don't know why, just about making that time. And then once I get out there and spend, even if it's 10, 20, 30 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, And so it's just a reminder to all of us to take the time to fill our buckets back up so that we can keep putting goodness out into the world.
For sure, exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Speaking of my horse, I made a little book for him.
Oh years ago. My gosh,
cute. One of my assignments at the PD was mounted patrol. It's a small department, so it wasn't a full-time assignment, but we did it for special events and things. And he's my unicorn horse. I will never, ever find another horse like him. So I did this is where my drawing came in.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so special.
So that's an oldie. I did that way before, shortly after I got married. So long before the kids came along.
Wow.
That's an example of how I started with drawing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So are there any other creative hobbies specifically? You love to draw, you now sew, you write patterns. Are there other creative hobbies that you'd like to get into?
Well, I'm usually down for anything. Like I'll try it and give it a whirl and see what it's like. I want to, there's a place down in Phoenix, about an hour and a half drive from here, that you can go in, and it's not like trying to sign up for a bunch of classes, but you can just throw clay on the wheel and just play with it. And I've wanted to learn how to do that.
That would be really fun. Yeah, I used to have, and this was just, I don't even know where my parents found it, but when I was a young girl, we had a play pottery wheel that actually worked. Like you could use the pedal and turn the pottery. And I can remember sitting in my parents' garage thinking that I was making the most magnificent pots, known to man. And my parents have a few of them, and they're the most little like wonky things, but I have not thrown pottery since I was young in my parents' garage. So that is up there on my list of things that I would like to do again, because I do remember really loving it. But one thing that we do just to kind of fill our buckets all the time and to remind us that learning is a good thing is that we try at least once a quarter to do like something that's completely out of the normal sewing, quilting, design element of our jobs here, whether it's, bead making or glass blowing or embroidery or whatever it is. We just try and create in a different way. And that has been a great challenge and a great way to just remember to play, because so much of the craft world, the sewing world, we can get really caught up in like the little minutia and the details, and really it should be fun. And so if we're not having fun, then we're missing something. And I think that like, what better way to remind you to have fun than to be working on, stuffed animals and toys for kiddos, because that's really the goal in the long run, is that they can enjoy it, right?
Absolutely. And when watching them come together, how can you not play with it? Like when it starts to come together, and after I first put the eyes in, I'm like, it's turning into something. And still, especially with the new design, I'm like, I was looking how I want it to, but how it's coming to life. And then when I stuff the head, I'm like, there it is. And it just finding it joy and excitement in it. And then you're like little puppets, like, here it is.
So this is a very kind of odd question. And so forgive me, but Jenny often shares this story of when she first taught her girls to sew. They made those, do you remember those giant, like floppy rabbits that were everywhere in the late 80s, early 90s, and you'd like dress them in different costumes? She taught them to make those. And she tells the story about how Sarah was like, okay, Mom, I'm really glad I learned this. I never want to do this again. Natalie was like, oh, this is cool. This was great. And then Hillary was like, let's, reattach the head 14 different ways just to see if we can give it a different expression. And I wonder, when you're making yours, do you ever have that where it's like, well, what if the eye was like this? Or what if I gave it a little smirk? Do you get to play with it? Yeah.
I do, and it's fun because just the eyelids, when you're playing with them, you can put them here and then you can turn them. And it really just, that alone changes the expression. And it's so fun to just see how things shift. And yeah, it's fun to do that for sure.
I love that. I mean, and that alone is just such a creative part of it, right? Like to be able to give so much personality to what you're making is really, really fun and special.
Right.
So,
absolutely. That's part of what makes it so special.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, so let's circle back. Tell everyone again where they can find you, what they will find on your website, and if they want to follow along with what you're up to, where to look for you.
Okay. You can find me on social media, Facebook and Instagram. I've got a group on Facebook, and it's a wonderful group. Everybody in there is so supportive. I love these people. I'm going to say ladies. There's a couple guys, but it's predominantly ladies. But these people in the group are just so supportive and share their makes and encourage other people. So I highly recommend joining the group just to see what everybody's making, if nothing else. But you'll also see what I'm up to. I have a website, rustichorseshoe.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I only send an email out on Fridays. I put a pattern on sale every Friday, but it's also where I announce what I'm working on, what's coming up, where I put out call for testers for my patterns. So there's that aspect. I do have a shop on Etsy. I know some people are more comfortable shopping on the third-party platform, and so I have a shop on Etsy. So Etsy, rustichorseshoe.com, and my social media.
Awesome. And so are you Rustic Horseshoe on your social media as well?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Well, so are there any final words of encouragement that you would like to leave with our listeners, and just to encourage them to maybe take that next leap into their own creative journeys?
Yeah, I would say don't get into your own head. Like, don't let it overwhelm you. Take it step by step, dive in, and you're going to be amazed at what you can make. It's deceptively easy, but it's easy to look at something like a stuffed animal and think, I just can't make that. I can't think in that way. And it's how I look at clothes. I look at clothes and I'm like, and I've made some, and with a lot of help from my friend who would help me with the garments. But so I get, when we sew different things, that something can look intimidating that's outside of our wheelhouse. But what I have to say is just dive in, give it a shot. You can start with something that's a little more easier pattern, or like I said, in mine, I have options. So stick with the basic options, get that down, and then maybe make another one where you're adding a little bit more, one layer of creativity to it, but also stepping it up to maybe an intermediate level or whatever to do that. But even that, I'm confident that if you just take it step by step, focus on what you're doing, trust the process, that you'll be able to make anything that you come across.
I love that. Thank you so much, Rena. Thanks for sharing a little bit about your story and what you do with me. I really appreciate you being here. And everybody, be sure to check out Rena at the Rustic Horseshoe and see what she's up to. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.